So I remember leaving university and starting my career as an accountant with very little knowledge of what I was getting myself into. I sort of fell into the profession, so I thought I'd make this video today talking about what it's really like to be a qualified accountant at a company. If this kind of content interests you, then please do subscribe to my channel, like this video, but with that being said, let's jump straight into it. Hey, how's it going? Paul Harris here. Welcome back to another one of my videos. Today I'm talking about what it's really like to be a qualified accountant. If you subscribe to my channel, you already know this, but I started at PwC, I became an external auditor, I left PwC, I was a finance analyst working in an FP&A team. I'm now a commercial finance business partner. So I've worked in quite a few roles. I sort of understand how a qualified accountant operates within these different departments. So I thought I would enlighten you as to what you're getting yourself in for if you're thinking about choosing this profession, and hopefully give you some information about the more frequently asked questions on this channel. So firstly, is being an accountant hard? I often get this as a question coming up. I would say no, but it depends on which stage in your learning curve you are. If you start and you're trying to qualify as an accountant, then everything's very new for you. You're having to learn firstly how to operate in that job and getting the work done, and then getting used to the corporate environment and getting used to, say, longer hours, whilst also studying on the weekends and in the evenings to pass your qualification. So that can seem quite hard in terms of the time you spend having to studying and then actually having to pass the exams. Exams aren't nice, so that's quite a hard prospect. But in terms of financial concepts, you should, particularly if you have like a 2-1 degree coming out of university, probably understand the accounting concepts. It just might take you a bit longer than some other people. It's quite logical the way that you have to think about accounting most of the time. There are some tricky accounting standards that could probably trip you up, but the work I do doesn't generally focus on very nuanced accounting standards. You just really need to know what like an accrual is or prepayment and things like that, and you're pretty much on your way. So in terms of difficulty, I would say it isn't the most difficult job out there. In terms of pay, well, I actually think it's quite a well-paid job, given the fact that once you get used to accounting and understand what you need to do each month, then the difficulty is quite low versus you're actually getting paid quite a lot compared to other departments straight out of the gate, and that's because you have that professional qualification as a way of justifying a higher salary than, say, other departments. So when you start, you probably, as a graduate, you're probably earning around £20,000. Depends where you are in the UK. It could be up to £27,000 if you're in say London and as a studying accountant. Then once you qualify, you might be around £30,000 to £36,000 ish. Then once you say move into a more senior sort of finance analyst role, you might be on, say, like £50,000 to £60,000. Managers maybe get, say, £70,000 to £80,000. A lot of these jobs also get bonuses. So I think it's quite a lot of money, really, given that you don't have to be in that senior role to still have a half-decent amount of pay, and that's because it's a more technically challenging role potentially compared to, say, some maybe more operational roles, or if you work in HR department or something like that, you have to be quite senior, I think, before you start getting that amount of pay. And also with finance, I guess one thing that's quite good is that sort of sky's the limit in terms of where you want to go, depending on how hard you're prepared to work and what industry you depend to go in. So another thing that's often thought within finance, and I do think it transfers into accounting, is that there's some longer hours there. Now, I don't generally like to think about it in terms of hours. I think you should try and get stuck into your work and try and do a good job and make sure all the work is done to a high standard and you're actually completing your work. So at some point in the month, say it's at month end, so the first few days of a month, you might have to work longer hours. And that's because you're closing the set of monthly accounts, and that involves probably the most arduous time as being a qualified accountant, is actually getting all the data together, reporting the data for what happened in the previous month, maybe forecasting for the rest of the year. So all that stuff kind of happens at the beginning of the month. What that does mean is you generally don't get a lot of holiday time around the start of the month, and people generally take holiday at the end of the month, and you might work, say, longer days, like 10-hour days, but you're just getting the job done, and there's sort of peaks and troughs to accounting, which is quite nice. So there's less busy times than there are busier times. But generally speaking, you know, there are some roles where you aren't that busy most of the time. So in terms of other jobs, you are quite busy, but still you're not going to be like Elon Musk sleeping in his office, but then you're not going to be worth 100 billion either. In terms of the reality of what you do as an accountant or as a qualified accountant, you're going to be generating a lot of reports. So, and you're going to be manipulating the data using Excel. That's generally what I've seen. A lot of the models are still based on Excel, and a lot of the reporting systems are very old systems that are very unintuitive to try and operate. That's just what I found, and maybe from that aspect it's not the most exciting job. Also, it's like, other than like a commercial role where there's a lot of positivity of like trying to do initiatives and drive the business forward, when you're working in finance and accounting, or let's just say accounting, then you are more interested in just what's the number, you know, or give me the actual financial number. You know, if you think you're going to drive the business forward by doing X, Y, and Z, how much money are we talking? You know, it's sort of brass taxes. Is that the saying? It's sort of, you get straight down and cut through, and you're really only interested in the number, which, again, that isn't the most exciting department. You know, you're trying to forecast or accrue a number for the year, so you're just interested in what the financial benefit is. But I think that's quite a good way of thinking in terms of understanding a business. It's nice to understand, you know, what the customers think and what the best products are and what the best yield is, and thinking like commercial aspects about how to drive a business forward. But really, you should always be thinking about, you know, is this actually going to make more money? Because at the end of the day, an idea might sound wonderful, but if it's making a significant loss, then it's not that great an idea, you know. So yeah, if we go back, the actual day-to-day running of being an accountant, you're pretty much going to be at round month end, you're going to be generating a lot of reports that tell you how the company performs. So you'll have things like a general ledger, so you might use like SAP or Oracle or other accounting systems that will record all the transactions that occurred in the previous month. You're basically downloading a lot of reports, and it's very processed. You know, you input the reports into a model, this spits out what the revenue number was or the costs are, and you can do very simple models to say what you think the cost projection is going to be based on last month's costs, and you're going to be accruing based on a general system that's been followed. And the thing is with what I'm talking about here is a lot of accounting is process. Regardless of what job you're in, if you're an external auditor, the whole point was, let's standardize a process to make it so it's really dull in terms of actually auditing a company, because you're just ticking through a load of procedures. And it's a bit like that when you're in an actual role, is there's a little bit of, you know, oh, we're just doing the same thing we did last month and the same thing we did last month. And there's some variety, and there's certain different projects which you're having to assess. But when you're combining the fact you just want to know what the number is with the fact that there's a standardized process, it can become a bit mechanical in terms of how you actually operate day to day. There's some improvements that you can find in terms of making the process quicker, but then that's almost where a lot of the enjoyment comes from. So from a sort of what you actually do day to day, it probably isn't a job for everyone, particularly someone who is very creative minded and wants to be more client facing. Obviously, these aren't things that you do as a financial accountant, because you are a back office role. But then you could start a YouTube channel as a creative output. There you go. Another positive thing about being a financial accountant, which I thought I would talk about, and this video does start to seem like I'm just going through a list of points, and that's exactly what I'm doing. But another positive thing about being a financial accountant is the type of work that you do lends itself very well to working from home. So obviously with COVID, everyone's having to work from home. I have actually seen some data saying that finance jobs are actually becoming a lot more restrictive because of COVID, so there are less of them out there. But if you manage to find yourself in an accounting job with the relaxed working environment, everyone working from home, you can operate as doing your role from your home very successfully. I don't see any reason why you would ever need to go back to the office. It probably would reinforce the fact that accountants are known for being unsociable people. So if you stick all of them in their home and never get them to talk to each other, it may reinforce that fact. But in terms of the people you work with, I do think that there are very serious people within finance. I do feel like, particularly in a lot of high senior roles, there's a very sort of no-nonsense approach. You know, let's not see any humour in anything, let's take it all very seriously. And I understand that, and that's probably because when you are very senior and you're meant to be seen as driving the financial performance of the business, then you don't want to make a joke if there's, you know, if the performance is bad, because maybe that's a reflection on you. I like to try and see a lot of humour in different factors when I'm working, and I feel like there are a lot of other people like that within the finance industry. And I always say finance, but I mean like within accounting departments. And I think that stems from the fact I think a lot of people who work in finance, in accounting, have landed in it just because that's the path they've gone on. You know, they've gone to university, they maybe didn't really know what they should be doing, so sort of landed in that sort of role. They became qualified. It didn't seem like a bad option. You know, there's a lot of jobs out there. It's quite nicely paid. So I feel like there is a, you know, just, you know, it's not like, and I think what comes with that is an element of not taking stuff too seriously. And but I have had some stinkers of managers, and I think you know, people say you don't leave a job because you don't like the job. You leave it because you want to find a new manager. And I think that's true. And I think a lot of how people interpret the success of work is based on the people they work with. I think there's been a large turnover of staff at the moment in these big four accountancy professional firms, and that's because the one element that was really going for it, in my opinion, was the social aspect. You'd have like these Friday drink sessions, where PwC would like pay for the night, or you'd have like a lot of events and corporate events, and those were all really good because it was a chance to like get together, and you don't see that in a lot of corporations from that I see. So it was quite well focused on the social aspect and getting to know your peers and working with a group of grads. And as this sort of work from home environment started, and you draw that factor away, all of a sudden there's a huge turnover because now you're just left with the work, and probably on balance it's not the best kind of work. So I do think you will have to move around to find the kind of team that you're interested in, but there are I do feel like the type of people that I work with and have worked with over the past have been, you know, I've always been able to find groups of people that I get along with and have the same sort of attitude that I do to work, which is good. I think, so overall, what do I think about accounting? What do I think the accounting profession is really like? Well, on balance, I think it's a good profession. It does feel very much like a job. I don't think I go to, you know, people say with some careers that I go to work every day, you know, absolutely pumped up about it. But then I have a lot of mixed friends. So I have my brother is self-employed. I have a friend who's a professional wrestler. I have a lot of friends who do sort of uncommon type jobs. I have other people that I've known in the past who work at Google. So I have a lot of friends who I know work in different kind of industries, and I imagine they have probably a lot more favourable view of work. But on balance, I think it's actually quite a good profession to get into. I like it. It's got me where I am today. But at the same time, probably the main drawback for me is the lack of creative aspect and the processing part of it, which you have to try and get more in. Well, that's why I tried to find a more commercial role with more project-based stuff, so it's more ad hoc, the kind of work you do, so it's moving forward, as opposed to sort of the monthly grind of being the same sort of thing. Also, on the side, I do these YouTube videos, and I'm also a wedding photographer. So, there we are. That's what I think of the accounting profession. Hopefully you found that interesting. If you did, subscribe to my channel, like this video. See you next time. Bye-bye.